Good afternoon, everyone. The topic that today we are going to do is the last one, trade and development. Okay, so there are three topics that we will learn in this one. First one is trade as an engine of growth. Trade as an engine of growth. Second thing we will look at terms of trade and economic development. Okay, terms of trade and economic development. In this we will look at Prebisch-Singer thesis. Prebisch-Singer, and the third topic is debate between import substitution versus export promotion growth. So today we will look at the topic trade as an engine of growth. Okay, and the last part of this topic is import substitution versus export promotion debate. So today we are going to do the first part of our trade and development topic, trade as an engine of growth. Okay, I divide this lecture into two parts. This is the first part of the lecture. So let's start with the introduction. So as we know, the rate of economic growth and the pace of economic development of the economy primarily depend on internal factor in less developing countries. The question is how much significant differences that international trade can make to economic development. This we have to find the answer. As we all know, no country is self-sufficient in the production of own goods and services. Okay, so trade is inevitable in today's world. The question is, can we visualize trade as an engine of growth? In other words, can we say that an economy can rely on trade for economic growth? Today, we will look at this aspect. So in the trade theory, there are various views related to this topic. Okay, we will look at some of the important one. So first one, we will look at mercantilism view, then physiocrat, Adam Smith absolute advantage, Ricardo comparative advantage, then the extension of Ricardo model, Hexagonal model, Nairsky and Medan formulation, Prebisch-Singer thesis, emerging growth by Jagdish Bhagwati, and then export net growth. When we talk about mercantilism system, okay, so in that rent is given in the form of precious metal. So a country can gain by having positive trade balance. Okay, we will discuss this more in detail when we talk about the mercantilism. Then in the physiocrat, they consider rent as a zone. What you can say? We can say that they consider rent to be the surplus in agriculture production. Okay, so according to them, a country can trade, means they are not like they're not against trade. They say that the country can trade for the needed commodity or the commodity that country required by exporting the surplus production. Okay, country can export the surplus production and they can import the commodity that they are required. They cannot produce the commodity. They can export that thing. Then Adam Smith come up in the 18th century and 1776. He write the Wealth of the Nation book. Okay, in which he attacked the mercantilist view and argued that trade is not a zero-sum game. Okay, according to mercantilists, trade is a zero-sum game because wealth is given. So when I say import more, okay, so in that case I have to give the wealth of my country to other country. Okay, so in that case I am losing my wealth, and according to them wealth is given. But according to Adam Smith, wealth is not given. Okay, it not determined by the precious metal. It is like wealth is our we will talk about that thing when it is actually about the factor of production. So according to Adam Smith, real wealth of a country wealth of a country, not real wealth of a country depend on real factor, not on precious metal. Okay. Then we look at the Ricardo. Okay, and Adam Smith had given the absolute advantage theory. Most of you people know, but we will discuss that thing also. And Ricardo make an improvement of the Adam Smith theory that why trade is beneficial for both the country, why it is positive sum scale. Okay. Then we will look at Hexa-Ohlin model. It is a 2 by 2 by 1 economic model in which we have two countries producing two goods using one factor of production. Okay. So here we are having two factor of production. In the Adam Smith and Ricardo, we have one factor of production. Okay. So the conclusion is the same, that trade is beneficial for both countries, but in the Hexa-Ohlin theorem, we see that the abundant factor will gain when trade will take place and when you have factor price equalization take place. Okay. So the abundant factor will gain from trade. Okay. And the scarce factor will lose from trade. So there will be some gainer and loser in the trade process, but overall the economy will gain in the trade process. Okay. So in the classical framework of Adam Smith, Ricardo and Hexa-Ohlin theorem, we see that trade is beneficent for growth. But Nursky and Medan have some reservation when it comes to developing countries. Okay, we will see this more in detail when we do the Ismon and Nash country case in the second part of the lecture. So according to Nursky and Medan, okay, this developing country require large import to stimulate growth, and also term of trade for primary good in less demand inelastic, which adversely impact their balance of trade. Okay. So according to them, trade is not beneficial for developing countries given their requirement for growth, and given the terms of trade is not favorable for developing countries because they are exporting the primary commodity. In the previous Singer's thesis also, we have the same issue. Okay, that next developing country export depend on primary commodities. So the volume of export and the price of commodity determine the earning revenue of the developing countries. So over time, what we see is that the price of primary commodity in relation to manufacturing commodity fall over time. Okay. So next developing country, generally what they see is that they see the fall in their revenue. So in order to keep pace or in order to maintain the same revenue, they need to improve or they need to increase their export over time. So this is not possible, and according to previous Singer thesis, this is the reason that the developing country facing difficulties in their trade balance. And the more we will discuss in the later part of the lecture. Okay, the concept of emerging growth is given by Jagjit Bhagwati. Okay, and it is valid for large country. I don't think it will be valid for a small country case. So in this case, generally he argued that if a country has export bias growth, okay, so when you have export bias growth, the commodity that you are exporting, the price of that commodity will fall. As a result, the terms of trade will become adverse. Okay, so if the decrease in terms of trade, like your terms of trade has fallen down because you have export bias growth. So when terms of trade fall, there will be an increase in the volume of export. So if the fall in terms of trade is larger than the growth in your export, okay, and in that case, what you will see that the country is worse off. In spite of having export bias growth, in spite of having growth, you can say the country is facing worse impact of the growth process. Okay. But this is valid for large country case because small countries and developing countries cannot influence the price, one price. Okay, so I don't think this will be valid for developing countries. This is a theoretical concept, and so we keep this as a theoretical concept only. The last one is export net growth, and it became famous in the 70s and 80s. Okay, so the main ingredient of export net growth are liberalized trade policy. Then you have free flow of capital. promoting exchange rate and infrastructure development for the MNC that is coming to your country, then deregulation of rules and law and minimum government intervention. Okay, so we will discuss on this thing in today's lecture, and I will conclude that trade as an engine of growth is beneficent for small countries or not, or beneficent for developing country or not, in the next lecture. So let's start with the mercantilist view. It originated in Europe, especially in Portugal, France, Spain and Great Britain, and existed between the period of 16th to 18th century. According to this view, wealth of a nation is derived from precious metal and its supply is fixed. Since the supply of wealth is fixed, so when a country import more than export, it will lose. Therefore, trade is a zero-sum game. According to them, a nation can become rich only at the expenses of others through positive trade balance. This is a viewpoint from developed country perspective, as we are talking about the industrialized European countries. So let's move into Physiocrat. Physiocrat originated in France in the second half of the 18th century. And according to this view, wealth of a nation derived from surplus of agriculture production. It not depend on precious metal. They believe that foreign trade has no real wealth effect. They were not entirely against foreign trade, and according to them, a country should trade for those goods that it cannot produce. Okay, for those goods that it produces in excess. As a reason, the Physiocrat advocate free trade. The main attack to mercantilist view came from Adam Smith. So let's look at the Adam Smith theory of absolute advantage. Adam Smith attacked mercantilist view and argued that the trade is a positive sum game instead of a zero sum game. According to him, wealth of a country depends on real factor and not on a stock of precious metal. He proposed absolute advantage theory. According to this theory, if a country A can produce a greater quantity of a good and service for the same cost or the same quantity at lower cost than the other country say B, then the country A has absolute advantage in that good. Also, if country B can produce other goods and services say Y more for the same cost, then country B has absolute advantage. In this case, trade is beneficent for both countries, as trade leads to an increase in overall output of the world. Let's see this with this example. In this example, we can see England has absolute advantage in cloth because it only requires 60 hours to produce cloth, okay, whereas Portugal requires 120 hours. And Portugal has absolute advantage in producing wine, as it only requires 70 hours compared to 110 hours by England. So Portugal has absolute advantage in producing wine. So when they trade, both countries will gain from trade in this formulation. So this is our absolute advantage theory, and in the Keynesian and New Keynesian both, we see that trade has benefit for both the country and it has positive impact on economic growth. This is as per Keynesian or New Keynesian view. Okay. So next we will look at this is our absolute advantage theory. Next we will look at Ricardo formulation. So Ricardo theory of comparative advantage is based, we will use the opportunity cost aspect. Okay, so we will use the formulation of opportunity cost. So take this example, it will be more clear. Okay, here country B has an absolute advantage in the production of both car and bike. Okay, because never hour for producing one unit in country B is lower for car also and bike also. hence trade can't take place. There are few things we have to note here. For the given resource, each country face opportunity cost of producing one good in terms of other goods. Okay, so let's write this thing in terms of opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost of producing car in terms of bike in country A is 2. Similarly, opportunity cost of producing bike in terms of car in country A is 0.5 cars. Similarly, we will do for country B. So opportunity cost of producing car in terms of bike in country B is 4. 8 divided by 2, we get 4. And the opportunity cost of producing bike in terms of car in country B is 2 divided by 8, we get 0.25. So here we see that country A has comparative advantage in producing car, you can see, okay, and country B has comparative advantage in the production of bike, you can see, okay. The important point to note is that for the given resource, it is impossible for a country to have a comparative advantage in on goods. So next we will look at Hexa-Ohnmy theorem, 2 by 2 by 1 economy. Next we will look at Hexa-Ohnmy model. So it is a 2 by 2 by 1 economy, two countries producing two goods using two factor of production. Here trade occurs due to differences in resource across countries, okay. In the Ricardo and Adam Smith, we see that it is neighbor productivity, differences in neighbor productivity that needs to trade. And in this Hexa-Ohnmy theorem, it is due to differences in resources. So in this model, country with abundant factor will export that commodity, and the scarce factor commodity it will import. And when you have open trade, there will be an equalization of factor price, okay, and one relative price also in this model. So each country is specialized in the production of that commodity in which the country has relatively abundant factor. So according to this theory, trade has effect on factor income, both labor and capital, and this we are talking about the original model. The relative price of the relative abundant factor increases when we have trade and factor price equalization, and that of scarce factor decreases in this model. So this is saying the same thing, that country will gain from the trade, okay, but there will be some winner and loser, okay, in this model. So the abundant factor will gain when you have open up of trade and factor price equalization and one price equalization, but the scarce factor in that country will lose in this framework. So when we conclude the Keynesian framework, we see that there is a positive impact of trade on economic growth, okay, provided that trade is free and there is no control. Thus trade need to expansion in one out, though there are some winner and loser are depicted in our Hexa-Ohnmy model. So next we will look at Nursky and Mridan formulation. So both Nursky and Mridan pointed out that developing countries have large import requirement to stimulate growth, okay. Also, these developing countries are able to export only the primary goods which have net inelastic demand in the international market. As a result, they always face adverse balance of payment. According to Nursky, trade may not act uniformly as an engine of growth in all the countries, and it has great positive impact for developed countries than developing countries. So developing countries will not gain uniformly with the trade. There will be some gainer and loser according to Nursky, and it will be different for developed country and developing country. Developed country will gain more because they are exporting the manufacturing goods that these developing countries are buying. Likewise, Mridan also pointed out that the international trade may increase the one economic inequality. So according to them, high import requirement and the domination of primary commodity export basket adversely affect the terms of trade of these developing countries. So next we will look at the concept of emerging growth given by Jagdish Bhagwati in 1958. The concept of emerging growth is given by Jagdish Bhagwati in 1958 and it is a theoretical formulation. So here he argued that the country will be worse off when they have growth in the exporting sector. The good that it is exporting, and if it get growth in that commodity, then there is a possibility that that country will have adverse impact on the terms of trade, and if the growth in trade is not enough, then the decrease in terms of trade, then the country will face adverse balance of payment problem. Okay, so if growth is heavily export based, it might need to fall in the terms of trade, because economic growth in the commodity that is export oriented, okay, need to a reduction in the price of that commodity. So in a rare circumstances, this fall in terms of trade may be large enough to outweigh the gain from growth. I discussed already this thing. So if the situation would cause a country to be worse off after growth than before, this might be the situation. This result is possible or valid only when the growing country is able to influence the one price, and for developing a small country, they cannot influence the one price. Okay, so this is not a valid reason, but this is one of the theoretical argument that is put up, that we discuss when we discuss about trade and growth. Okay, so this is one of the argument that theoretical argument that growth can impact trade also. So we can discuss the opposite of that thing also, that if beneficent growth, we can talk about that thing beneficent. Some of the author talk that if there is a growth in the importing commodity, then you will not import much, so there will be an improvement in your balance of payment. So you can put up that point also in this case. Here is a representation of that thing. So this is the initial production possibility frontier, okay, and this is your terms of trade, and here this Bunun curve is the consumption of your country, this country that is exporting growth. Okay, so here consumption is outside your production possibility frontier. So now you have bias growth toward growth. Now your terms of trade worsen as it become flatter. Your terms of trade become flatter. Okay, sorry, one correction here. This is the terms of trade. Okay, before you have export bias growth, this black line, and this night Bunu color is your consumption possibility, that is outside your production possibility. Okay, and this one is your export bias growth. So now your terms of trade is worsen. Okay, so now your consumption possibility move inside. So see, when you have worsening of terms of trade and you don't have enough growth, so what we see, you are consuming, still you are benefiting because you are outside the production possibility frontier, but since terms of trade worsen, so you are consuming less than before in this framework. So next we will look at Previs-Singer hypothesis or thesis. So they talk about the same primary commodities, and we talk about the total export earning of the developing countries, which depend on the quantity of export times the price of that export. So volume of the export times the price of that commodity. Okay, so both argue that the primary commodity export prices fall over time in relation to manufacturing commodity. So next developing countries loses revenue unless they continually increase export volume. They put up this argument that next developing countries need to avoid dependency on primary export for growth. Okay, this is their main argument in the thesis. So this is one graphical representation. So the basic idea is that in the long term, the price of the commodity, primary commodity, will fall, which will worsen the terms of trade for primary exporter, okay, primary good exporter. So they argue that it is better to focus on import substitution policy. So according to their hypothesis, the long-run prices of primary commodity will decline relative to the price of manufacturing goods. Okay. Thus, the relative terms of trade for countries with primary product dependency will decline. So they say that better than focusing on export, the developing country should focus on import substitution policy. This is the crux of their argument. So we will discuss more about this thesis or hypothesis in detail when we talk about this thing. The next part that we are going to discuss is export net growth. Okay. So in the 50s and 60s, most of the countries are following the import substitution based industrialization process, except Japan and Germany, and they had taken the route of export net growth and they have got success. So it is during the late 70s that we see that the developing countries replace this import substitution policy with export promotion policy, and it is assumed that country will need to adopt certain policies. Okay, so some of these policies are liberalization in the trade, then you have to have liberalization in the flow of capital, floating exchange rate, that the government should not have intervention in the determination of exchange rate. Then there should be infrastructure development so that the cost of doing business or doing activity, industrial activity should come down, and government should have minimum intervention in the working of the market economy. This export oriented policy differ from country to country. For example, during 50s and 60s, Germany and Japan followed it. They have their indigenous industrial base and they get success by undervaluing their domestic currency during that time. Then later on the 70s and 80s, what we call East Asian Tiger comprises of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea and Taiwan. They followed it and they rely on undervalue exchange rate and the acquisition of foreign technology. It is due to the acquisition of foreign technology that this East Asian tigers get growth during the 70s and 80s. The later on we have a case of Latin American countries that depend on foreign MNCs rather than developing their own indigenous industrial capacity for export net growth. Thus what we see is that there is a new era of globalization taking place. Okay, and in this era we see that we have a change in one economic policy and China is the most benefited country in this case. So what we see in this new era, that export net growth is no longer a purely national strategy. Instead, it is a partnership between developing countries, MNCs and developed countries. Okay, so rather than using export promotion to facilitate the development of domestic industry, the new model for developing nation became a platform for MNCs for the setting up of no cost production center to provide cheap export to the developed countries. And in this export net growth, the NATO on the most advantaged country is the China, and it has a typical different growth path from the other country. As I discussed, this export net growth differ from country to country. So here China has a peculiar different combination of policy that is followed. Like they have import control, undervalue exchange currency or exchange rate, lower wages for worker, and development of indigenous technology and industrial base. Then growth policies. Then the export growth policy or the growth policy when we talk, okay. So is it a solution for the country problem when we talk about the entire countries of the world? The idea is applicable for some country, and they know a single short framework for this kind of policy. Initially, the country that participated, they benefited, okay, through technology transfer. Then later on, many players like MNCs, developed countries, and most of the like organization come up, and it become difficult for like the newcomer to gain from this export oriented growth. So it is impossible, it become impossible in that sense that one country cannot grow by promoting export, okay, because we cannot have net export positive for the entire countries of the world. Also, this export oriented growth differ from country to country as we discussed, and given that participation of several players like MNCs we discussed, developed countries, many organizations, and the developing countries is government, so it become more open exogenously given rather than national strategy, and rather than the strategy that can be adopted. So given inducement structure remains the same, okay. So we see that this export oriented strategy cannot be taken as a national strategy to consider trade, okay, and consider this trade to be promoting growth. So export oriented strategy can be useful only when there is just some exogenous thing happening and your country is benefiting from that thing, okay, and it is due to that benefit you are getting the growth. So it cannot be taken as a strategy. So till now what we have discussed about the mercantilism view, okay, that say that consolidated the regional power and look at the nation state and say that, okay, look, nation state can become powerful only when we can have net export positive, okay. So that means that according to them this trade is a zero sum game. Then we look at physiocrat, they say that we can have export and import depending upon our requirement. So when it is not depend on something like bullion or your gold and precious metal. Then we move on to look at the formulation of Adam Smith that heavily criticized the mercantilism formulation and say that trade is a positive sum game, and this view is also supported by the work of Ricardo and the later on Hexaonian, another author. Then upon the classic and new classical view that we look at, according to this view, we have to only write the view of the classic and new classical and just few points from Ricardo, Adam Smith and Hexaonian that trade is a benefit for trade has a positive impact and it benefit both countries involving in the trade, okay. Then we look at the Nursky Mirdan formulation, and according to them trade adversely affect the terms of trade because of two reasons. One reason is that because developing country want to grow, so they will import many capital goods and they will import semi finished good and also inputs also like oil, and they will export the primary goods for which terms of trade also not good because of no income necessity. So it is that we will see that over the period of time there will be a adverse terms of trade for the developing country. Then we look at emerging growth aspect. It is a theoretical framework that also say that when you have growth, export bias growth, then you can have adverse terms of trade. Then we look at export based export oriented growth, and it differ from country to country, and now we see that it is more of an exogenous thing given, and it cannot be taken as a national policy because of two things. First, they are not a player involved, and for own countries we cannot expect that it will be positive, because how can for own countries we can have net export positive, okay. So till now we have done this thing. So we have to look at this viewpoint from small country cases, that under what condition it will be beneficent for the small country and whether that condition hold or not. Okay, so that is the most important point, that the condition that is required for developing country to gain from there, whether that condition hold or not. Okay, so I hope this lecture help you people. So if there is any doubt, you people can contact me tomorrow anytime. Okay, and next lecture I prepared already. I need to make this PowerPoint and I will provide you soon. Okay, so prepare this lecture, write down, and wherever you not understand, revise your international trade theory. I have not given any new theory here. Okay, what is the minimum requirement I have put up here. Okay, so that you people not get confused, and some of the important thing that is required I will put up in the next lecture. Thank you for this lecture.